First, joining me now to dig into the polling is former Liberal advisor and DPG Advisory Solutions founder and director, David Gazard. David, great to see you again. I guess we've got to be cautious about polls. They've been wrong before, haven't they?
Well, we'll all remember 2019, Steve, when there was a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth on the election panels when Scott Morrison got over the line, defying all of the national polls. Although they did break late in the last week, more in his favour. But there were plenty of press gallery journalists saying, how did the polls get this so wrong? And I still remember watching the start of that night with Sam Dastyari, a former Labor senator, saying he'd seen no data that could suggest that the coalition would win. And of course, they won very famously in that election. So polls can be wrong. I think they're showing a general trend in the national mood. But of course, we're not really that interested in the national mood when it comes down to a handful of marginal seats that are going to determine the outcome of this election.
Yeah, well, in 2019, the bookies paid out prior to the actual election day, getting it completely wrong. You wonder whether, that might happen now, because I think the last odds I saw, David, had the coalition at one booking $8.50 a win, another $9.50. So the money's obviously flowing for Labor. Do you give Peter Dutton any chance of pulling off a minority government?
There's an outside chance. I think it would be very much an outside chance. Don't forget either, in Australia's history, we've only ever had one-term government. So we'd have to defy, over 100 years of tradition to do that. We have short cycles. And just with the way the polls have gone, the national mood will be somewhat important. It has firmed for Labor. But here is the outlier, Steve, and this is something that has been in focus within the coalition over the last week. There has been an enormous rise of people parking their votes with some of the minor parties. And some seats where Labor is on the nose, you're seeing One Nation recording double-digit numbers. And this is where the national polls don't tend to get things right, because they measure the two-party preferred number based on preference flows from the last election. Where you have much higher expected primary vote support for One Nation, the Patriots, the Trumpet Patriots, the Libertarian Party, Family First Party, that is going to flow strongly back to the coalition. So it will push up their 2PP vote to a point that a lot of these polls aren't measuring. The other thing is this. A lot of the people that are parking their votes with the minor parties won't tell you how they're going to preference. They won't take how to vote cards. But they've anecdotally been infuriated by the suggestion that Labor will bring back the voice, and they're preferencing accordingly. So I expect to see a stronger vote come through on the 2PP basis, particularly in some of those seats ringing out of metropolitan areas, Central Coast, South Coast of New South Wales, some parts of Queensland, some parts of WA, and the outer metro areas in Melbourne. So I think on the night, it might be hard to get a minority Dutton government, but I think you might see the Albanese government deep in minority.
Have you been disappointed at some of the way that the Labor campaign has been run, where you get a Prime Minister or a Treasurer or a Senior Minister coming out and basically telling untruths, saying that Peter Dutton, if he were to win, would trash Medicare? I mean, he's clearly not going to do that. And they just repeat this over and over again, and they've used that $600 billion figure on the nuclear power plants, which was, cooked up by the Smart Energy Council or the Clean Energy Council. Have you been disappointed by that? I mean, I don't mind a rigorous debate between policies, but how do you get away with untruths in political advertising and appearances?
This Medicare thing has been a feature of almost every campaign since the Fraser days. So I can't understand how people continue to fall for this. It disappoints me from the sense that it doesn't get called out by the gallery. I don't think the coalition would get away with it if they tried what is an outright lie in a campaign on Medicare or something to do with tax. It just wouldn't fly. The other thing, though, is it is incumbent on the coalition to push back stronger, and it did surprise me that they weren't prepared for this, and they didn't hit back harder throughout the campaign. So, you can derail a campaign by pointing to the fact that the Prime Minister has, this little Medicare card just been completely and utterly wrong the whole way through, in the same way that he was wrong about $275 coming off your power bill, which has hurt him over the course of the last election. So, everything's fair in love and war and in campaigns, but it does disappoint me that they've got away with this again. But it also surprises me the coalition didn't hit back harder earlier.